Questions?
In 1989, Sanders travelled to Cuba where he attempted to meet communist dictator Fidel Castro. He later praised Castro for his wonderful government-run healthcare.
Just because Ronald Reagan dislikes these people does not mean to say that the people in their own nations feel the same way.
In his first congressional race, Bernie Sanders was personally endorsed by journalism icon and Democratic Socialist of America supporter I.F. Stone. Stone praised Bernie Sanders for his pragmatic socialism. Stone was later identified as a paid Soviet spy. Bernie Sanders has worked with DSA for more than 30 years. It was DSA money and volunteers that put Bernie Sanders into the Congress in the first place and then into the US Senate. The DSA was the backbone of Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential campaign. Labor for Bernie was run by DSAer Rand Wilson, and People for Bernie was led by another DSA comrade, Charles Lenchner.
And we feel the Bernie Sanders movement was a very positive movement. What it did in this country, where the term socialism was a term that was kind of had a negative connotation, suddenly that's been transformed. And we talk to young people especially, and they're all interested in socialism now.
Do you think Bernie Sanders could pass an FBI background security check? DSA's closest ally in the takeover of the Democratic Party is the smaller but highly influential Communist Party USA.
I remember going with another comrade to meet with Howard Berman, who was a Democratic Party congressman, and giving him our demands and asking for him to include that in his program, and that we in exchange would provide campaign workers who would go door to door and help him get reelected.
Did he realize you were a Communist Party member?
Oh, yeah.
So the Communist Party would go to a Democratic congressman and exchange for him promoting certain policies, you would help him get elected. There was a deal made. And was that a common thing in the Communist Party? Would they often cooperate with Democrats where they could?
Wherever they could, and they particularly targeted certain organizations. The ADA, Americans for Democratic Action, was a large pressure lobbying group within the Democratic Party in Southern California, and the Communist Party was very active in shaping the policy programs of that organization.
Which would in turn shape the policies of the Democratic Party.
Right.
Most congressmen on the left could not pass a security check whatsoever. Senator Barack Obama could not have passed a security check whatsoever.
Let me ask you, sir, just how serious a threat to our national security are these communist subversive activities in the United States today?
Well, I think they're serious. I think it's a matter that we should continue to give great care and attention to. We should support the laws which the United States has passed in order to protect us from those who would destroy us from within.
Once, the Democratic Party was strongly opposed to communism and socialism. Now, not so much.
Yeah, we're part of what I kind of call the progressive pro-labor wing of the Democratic Party. I mean, it's no secret.
For some reason, back in the 30s, the communists decided that the Democratic Party was the one to target. And even that far back, they began infiltrating the Democratic Party with real communist agents, and many of whom were Soviet agents as well. And that hasn't changed. They targeted the Democratic Party. They saw the Democratic Party as the best vehicle to promote communism by another name.
The Communist Party USA has influence and control over many members of your Congress. In Washington State, Communist Party leader Tim Wheeler works hard to elect Senator Patty Murray, a longtime Communist favorite. In Ohio, Communist boss Rick Nagin has run several times on the Democratic Party ticket and works very closely with former Congressman Dennis Kucinich. In Minnesota, top communist Mark Frumke has ties to Senators Amy Klobuchar and Al Franken and to Governor Mark Dayton. In Arizona, Congress members Raul Grijalva and Kirsten Sinema both got their start in Communist Party circles. The Communists are very close to Californian Barbara Lee,
I've been to Cuba over 20 times.
Top-ranking Democrat on the Homeland Security Committee, Benny Thompson of Mississippi, has worked with several Communist Party fronts. In Texas, Armed Services Committee member Mark Vasey works very closely with leading Dallas communist Gene Lantz. Connecticut Armed Services Committee member Joe Courtney also has Communist Party connections. Another senior Connecticut Democrat, Rosa DeLauro, is co-chair of the House Democratic Steering and Policy Committee, where she appoints fellow Congress members to influential House committees. In August 2010, Rosa DeLauro keynoted a conference at the Connecticut Communist Party headquarters with her good friend Joelle Fishman.
Well, I chair the Political Action Commission of the party nationally, and I also chair the Communist Party in Connecticut, which is my home base.
Joelle Fishman's Political Action Committee is the Communist Party body delegated to liaise with the Democratic Party and to help elect as many far-left Democrats to Congress and the Senate as possible, like Chicago Representative Bobby Rush.
Murder. The pigs murdered Deputy Chairman Fred Hampton. I prove it to the world that Fred Hampton was murdered by the pigs.
The immediate, violent, criminal reaction of the occupants in shooting at announced police officers emphasizes the extreme viciousness of the Black Panther Party.
Today, a day after Chicago police shot it out with the Black Panthers, killing 2 of them, they raided the apartment of another Panther leader, Bobby Rush.
We found a small quantity of shotgun, rifle, and pistol ammunition, a small foreign-make Derringer, a small quantity of marijuana.
Just because someone wears a hoodie.
Training manuals, Army training manuals on booby traps, explosives and demolitions, and shotguns.
Does not make them a hoodlum.
And quite a bit of reading material on revolutionary reading material, such as Che Guevara, Mao Tse-tung, and this sort of thing.
Take a look at these Communist Party policies that have wormed their way into your Congress.
My cousin, she came from Venezuela seeking political asylum about 6 months ago. This is almost going to sound like a made-up story, but I wish it was. She called me one day crying, and she asked me, I just heard a speech by Hillary Clinton. How is it possible that I left Venezuela under so much oppression, and I'm coming here and I'm hearing the exact same speech that Maduro gives?
So you would compare a communist dictator in Venezuela basically espousing the same ideas that a serious contender for the US presidency would espouse.
Not just a serious presidential contender. I would compare most of the Democrat Party to Latin American-style socialists, 100%.
So how effective has the Communist Party been at influencing the Democratic Party? In March 2009, Vice President Joe Biden traveled to Chile to meet with that country's communist-backed president, Michelle Bachelet, and Brazil's pro-communist president, Lula da Silva.
We are moving as rapidly as we can to change the direction of our country and our policies. We're going to have to ask, and we don't expect to get it, but we have to ask for a little bit of patience.
The Democrats, their party planks are all the planks of the Communist Party. They just present it a slightly different way. They present it as progressivism, or they present it as liberalism, or they present it as spreading the wealth, or giving the little guy a chance.
Democratic leadership have also partnered with the Party of European Socialists, an alliance of democratic socialists and former Stalinist European communist parties.
The cooperation between our parties has intensified significantly in the past 2.5 years, with regular contact at Congress, Senate, party, and foundation levels. The attendance of President Clinton and myself at the Global Progressive Forum World Conference in Brussels in 2009 proves this point very well.
You are here to grapple with a problem that progressives in every country have been facing really for 20 years at least, since the fall of the Berlin Wall. How do we support a more integrated world where borders are coming down and still preserve a sense of social justice and fairness?
The PEZ has been a reliable partner for a long time. I'm glad you're having this Congress now, and its outcome can only be one, a stronger Party of European Socialists. Because what we need today is a strong PES and a strong Democratic Party working together. Progressives need it, the planet needs it, and our people need it.
The change is happening in the United States of America. And we want to have that change also in Europe. I believe in a European dream. More social, more equal, and greener Europe. Yes, we can!
So what is the main roadblock to world socialism?
They don't say we're trying to weaken the military. They're just saying if we didn't have to spend all this war money and all this money for weapons, we'd have the health care, there'd be no crippled, there'd be no hungry.
Another huge source of funds is the reordering of government priorities away from military spending.
The key to the policies we want lies in shifting some of the funding from military to domestic programs.
The Council for a Livable World has done more damage to the US military than most armies could ever dream of.
Back when we were battling the Soviets, they were among the Soviets' most reliable propaganda allies here in the United States.
Coincidentally, Democratic Socialists of America is also very strong inside the Council for a Livable World. Longtime council director Jerome Grossman was close to Boston Democratic Socialists of America and was a brother-in-law of New York DSA comrade Victor Siddell. The council's Political Action Committee, Peace PAC, was run by David Bonnier, once second-ranked Democrat in the House of Representatives and now a dues-paying DSA member. The council's current director is DSA-endorsed former Massachusetts Congressman John Tierney. The Council for a Livable World was founded in 1962 by Leo Szilard, a supporter of the failed Hungarian Communist Revolution of 1919. Leo Szilard fled to the United States, where he became a prominent nuclear physicist and a leader of the Manhattan Project, which created the first US atomic bomb. The council began modestly. It funded socialist-leaning Senate candidates in low-budget elections in small states. These grateful new senators would then be lobbied by the council to vote to reduce US military spending and cut nuclear arms programs at every possible opportunity.
Council for a Livable World has been endorsing candidates since 1962. We endorse in races where the person we endorse has a strong chance of winning, has a good positions on our issues, and is running against someone whose positions we don't agree with.
So tell me how the Council for a Livable World aided the Soviet cause.
Well, first of all, they had about a 100-degree correlation between their line and the Soviet line, and always being a reliable, quote-unquote, neutral peace activist voice out there to blast any efforts to improve American defense and to pretty much demand everything that the Soviets were demanding without sounding like they were Soviet agents.
In 50 years, the council has funded over 200 Congress members.
I do want to thank the Council for a Livable World.
And 130 senators, including over 40 of the current Democratic delegation.
And I want to thank so much the supporters of Council for a Livable World.
I'm very proud to have the support of the Council for a Livable World.
Thank you to the Council for being such a great friend to me from the very beginning.
Thank you for the invaluable support you provide to candidates like me.
The Council for a Livable World has funded Senators Tim Kaine, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden.
My ties to the council run long and deep, stretching way back to my first campaign for the United States Senate. That help has continued throughout my entire career, especially when I was chairman of the United States Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And it continues to this very day.
Now it's much more mainstream with Obama, Clinton, Biden, those policies. Council for a Livable World is, you can't dismiss it as a radical group anymore because it's now center-left, whereas before it had been far-left, even though it hasn't changed its basic views.
In 1994, former Soviet KGB officer Pavel Sudoplatov spilled the beans on Council for a Livable World founder Leo Szilard. Sudoplatov revealed that Leo Szilard had been a fully recruited Soviet agent. Stalin's spy chief Lavrenti Beria had personally ordered that Leo Szilad's political influence was to be exploited to communist advantage. Leo Szilad's mission was to eliminate America's nuclear superiority over the Soviet Union.
So for a group like the Council for a Livable World to exist for decades, scrupulously following the Soviet line, then to have its founder unmasked as a controlled Soviet agent by one of the control officers, that changes the picture completely.
The Council for a Livable World has been able to influence US defense policies for decades. The Council also claims to have influenced several major arms limitation treaties signed with the Soviet Union or Russia, all of which benefited Moscow and damaged the United States. But is this just boasting? How successful has the Council for a Livable World actually been?
From ratifying the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty and START to establishing a nuclear testing moratorium here at home, to the Chemical Weapons Convention, and to this very day, your support and guidance during our recent effort to ratify New START.
Never in my lifetime did I believe I would witness this great country of ours being withdrawn from our world leadership role and taken down by our own administration.
The American military of today is not the American military of the First Persian Gulf War. People remember how we managed to move vast numbers of troops and material and supplies. We were using the Ronald Reagan legacy of our preparedness to prosecute a World War III in NATO Europe, and we actually used it during the First Persian Gulf War. And it was so impressive, and these advanced technologies were so impressive. And most Americans today still think, I believe, that we have those kinds of capabilities, but we don't.
You're decimating our capability, so that today we're winding up with the smallest army prior to World War II, the smallest Navy prior to World War I. And just to give you an example of what we're competing against, the Chinese are building 60 ships a year. We're building 10, 9.
Our Navy is smaller now than any time since 1917. Our Air Force is older and smaller than any time since it was founded in 1947.
Well, Governor, we also have fewer horses and bayonets.
We can let the Russians build up their forces. We can cut ours back in Europe because America has such overwhelming nuclear superiority that the conventional forces are really secondary.
That used to be the argument. And there was a time in the Cold War, early in the Cold War, before we had the nuclear arms race and they caught up to us, where that was true. If you count the nuclear warheads the way the Obama administration does, they try to make it sound like parity, but they're leaving out a whole category of Russian nuclear weapons in order to do that. Mostly what people read about in the newspapers these days is the strategic nuclear balance, the number of weapons we have on our long-range nuclear missiles and bombers. And there's a treaty, the START Treaty, Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. And under the terms of that treaty, we do still have parity in terms of the strategic weapons. We've got 1,500, they've got 1,500. However, they never talk about the tactical nuclear balance. And if you take the lowest numbers for their tactical nuclear arsenal, it's 3,000 weapons today. It could be as high as 20,000. But if you take the lowest number, 3,000, all right? 3,000 tactical nuclear weapons, plus the 1,500 long-range strategic nuclear weapons is 4,500 nuclear weapons. We've got 1,500 long-range strategic weapons and 200 obsolete tactical nuclear. I hope we still have them.
Just 200.
200 are left, and they're just old gravity bombs that are bunkered in West Germany. The Russians even know exactly where they are. So that's 1,700 nuclear weapons in the overall nuclear balance. Versus 4,500. They have an overwhelming advantage in the overall nuclear balance numerically and technologically because their strategic weapons, too, are brand new. They're advanced strategic weapons, whereas our strategic weapons, those long-range weapons I'm talking, there are many experts who wonder if we actually have a nuclear deterrent anymore. The missiles and the weapons themselves are much older than the flight crews that have to maintain these weapons.
Republican candidates who keep saying the incompetency of the Obama administration is unbelievable. Well, let me tell you, they're not incompetent at all. They have a strategy. They have executed it brilliantly.
The most significant thing your president said in his entire first term of office, when he was caught off mic in South Korea, off mic so he thought, with then Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, thought no one was listening.
My last election, after my election, I have more flexibility.
Yes, said Medvedev, I understand. I will pass your message on to Vladimir. We are with you.
What sitting president of the